The rain had stopped hours ago, but puddles in the Portland Auto Shop parking lot still mirrored the flickering neon sign. Dante Marlowe wiped motor oil from his forearms with a threadbare red rag. At 18, he stood 6'3", broad-shouldered and lean-muscled from years hauling engine blocks and working double shifts. His hands bore the calluses of honest labor. His eyes, a warm hazel under the dim garage lights, held the stillness of someone who had learned to read danger before it announced itself. The silver amulet pressed against his chest burned. It had been doing that more frequently. His mother made him wear it at age 5. Never take it off, she had insisted. Not ever. He had asked why 100 times over the years. She never gave a straight answer. 3 black SUVs rolled into the lot just as Dante reached for the garage door. Tinted windows, New York plates. They moved in formation too synchronized for casual customers. Dante's pulse stayed steady. His mother had taught him stillness. Observe first, react second, survive always. 6 men emerged in perfect rhythm, dark suits tailored too well for mechanics or salesmen. Their movements carried the coordinated grace of pack hunters. Dante smelled them before they spoke. Pine and granite and something metallic beneath. Something ancient and wild. His body recognized what his mind refused to name. The lead enforcer was massive, close to 300 pounds of scar tissue and controlled violence. His smile belonged to a predator cornering wounded prey. "Where's the owner, kid?" Dante set down the rag. The amulet seared his skin now, white hot. The beast inside him, dormant for 18 years, stirred. Not fear, recognition, territory, challenge. "He's not here." "Then you'll pay the toll." The enforcer shoved Dante hard against the metal garage door. The amulet's chain snapped. Everything changed. The pressure inside Dante's chest erupted outward in a shockwave of pure dominance. The air shimmered and fractured. An invisible force crashed down on the parking lot like a collapsing building. 2 enforcers dropped instantly, hands clutching their throats as their inner wolves submitted to superior authority. The others staggered back, confusion shifting to primal terror. Dante didn't shift, didn't need to. His eyes bled from hazel to luminescent glacial blue. Ancient, absolute, the color of winter storms and bloodlines older than any modern pack. His hands shot out, locking around the lead enforcer's throat. He lifted the 300-pound man with one arm. The enforcer's feet kicked uselessly in empty air. "Never," Dante whispered, his voice layered with something inhuman. "Touch me again." He hurled the man halfway across the lot. The enforcer hit pavement and skidded through an oil slick, gasping. The others scrambled into their vehicles, engines roaring, tires screaming as they fled into the rainy Portland night. Dante stood alone in the empty lot, chest heaving, broken amulet pieces scattered at his feet like shattered promises. For the first time in his life, he had felt what he truly was. There was no going back. The apartment Dante shared with his mother occupied a cramped third-floor walk-up in a building that needed renovation 2 decades ago. The radiator clanked and hissed, walls thin enough to transmit the neighbor's television through plaster. But it was clean. Isla Marlowe kept it clean no matter how many double shifts she worked at the diner or how many office buildings she scrubbed before dawn. When Dante walked through the door that night, Isla sat at the kitchen table in darkness. She didn't look up. Her hands folded in her lap, trembling. She was 37 but looked older. Exhaustion and fear had carved lines around her eyes and mouth. Her hair, once rich chestnut, now carried silver threads at the temples. She had been beautiful once. Dante knew this from the single photograph hidden in a lockbox under her bedroom floorboards. In that picture, she was 19, laughing, wearing an oversized sweater and holding old books. Her eyes had been bright, hopeful. That girl was gone. "They found you," Isla said quietly, not a question. Dante set his backpack on worn linoleum. Broken amulet pieces rattled in his jacket pocket. He remained standing. "Men in suits. They smelled like..." He searched for words never allowed. "Like monsters. Like me." Isla's eyes closed. A single tear traced her cheek, catching street lamp light through the window. She stood slowly, movements weighted by 18 years of secrets, and walked to her bedroom. Floorboards creaked. Metal scraped. A lock clicked. She returned carrying a small metal box, tarnished, dented. She placed it between them and opened it with shaking hands. Inside lay a medallion, heavy silver. The engraving showed a wolf howling over a mountain peak surrounded by intricate thorns. Beneath the wolf, a single word, Thornwell. Beside it lay a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Kieran Thornwell, CEO of Thornwell Enterprises, weds Callista Ravencroft in merger of the decade." The photograph showed a man in his early 20s, sharp-featured and cold-eyed, standing beside a woman who wore diamonds like armor. Dante looked at the photograph, then at his reflection in the darkened window. The jawline, the broad shoulders, the dark hair that never stayed combed, and those eyes. The same piercing blue he'd only seen in mirrors and now staring back from a 20-year-old newspaper. "His name is Kieran Thornwell," Isla whispered. "He's your father." The words hung like smoke. Dante sat, and Isla began to speak. The story emerged in fragments. Painful, halting, like extracting shrapnel from old wounds. 18 years ago, Isla had been 19, a low-ranking beta wolf working as an archivist in the Thornwell Pack's historical library. She loved the quiet, old paper and leather bindings, how sunlight filtered through tall windows and made dust motes dance. She never wanted power or status, only to be left alone with her books. Kieran Thornwell had been 22, newly ascended alpha after his father's death in a plane crash, grieving, overwhelmed, crushed under the weight of a multi-billion-dollar logistics empire and pack elders who treated him like a puppet. They met by accident, Kieran searching for his father's old journals in the archives, Isla cataloging 19th century pack histories. Their hands touched, reaching for the same leather-bound volume. The mating bond snapped into place like lightning striking dry timber. 3 months of secrets, stolen moments in the library after midnight, whispered promises in the shadow of ancient text. Kieran swore he would defy the pack elders, swore she would be his Luna, his mate, his equal. But promises made in darkness rarely survive boardrooms and balance sheets. The Ravencroft family, a powerful European pack syndicate, circled Thornwell Enterprises like sharks scenting blood. They threatened hostile takeover, financial ruin, territorial war. The only salvation was a political marriage. Callista Ravencroft was everything Isla wasn't, impeccably poised, ruthlessly ambitious, backed by enforcers and old European money. Isla remembered the ending with agonizing clarity. She'd woken feeling nauseous, a flutter in her stomach. Her wolf instincts recognized it immediately. Pregnant, carrying an alpha's heir. She rushed to Kieran's private office, heart pounding with terrible joy and terror, pushed past his bewildered secretary, threw open heavy oak doors. Kieran stood by floor-to-ceiling windows, flanked by 3 pack elders and Callista Ravencroft, who already wore the Thornwell family signet ring. Callista's perfume filled the room, expensive, suffocating, dominant. Kieran didn't look at Isla when he spoke. His voice held no warmth, no recognition, nothing resembling the man who'd held her in library stacks and promised forever. "Isla, you shouldn't be here." "Kieran, I need to talk to you alone, please. It's urgent." "There is nothing you can say that my future Luna cannot hear." He turned then. His eyes were dead, flat, emptied of everything she'd believed was real. "The elders have made their decision. A beta archivist cannot lead this pack through war. You are a liability, Isla." The words struck like physical blows. Isla placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach. The confession died on her tongue, because Callista leaned close and whispered so quiet only Isla's wolf hearing caught it. "If you tell him about the child, I will have it cut from your womb before sunrise. I have seers watching. Any heir from a beta will be eliminated." Isla's maternal instincts flared white hot. She said nothing. Then Kieran spoke the ritual words. The ancient rejection that severed mating bonds and cast wolves from packs. "I, Kieran Thornwell Alpha of the Aspen Pack, reject you, Isla Marlowe, as my mate and Luna. The physical pain of a rejected bond is said to be like having your spine ripped out while conscious." Isla collapsed on marble floor. Blood poured from her nose as the bond shredded itself, tearing through her nervous system like barbed wire. Her wolf howled inside her mind, a sound of absolute devastation no human throat could produce. Kieran flinched, took half a step forward, but Callista's hand pressed his chest, stopping him. "Get her out of my sight," Callista told the guards. "Escort her off Packlands. She is stripped of rank, a rogue." Isla was given 10 minutes to pack a single duffel bag. She left Aspen, Colorado on a Greyhound bus bound for Portland, Oregon, with $300, a shattered soul, and the future alpha of the Thornwell Pack, growing silently in her womb. Dante listened without interruption. His hands rested flat on the kitchen table, fingers spread perfectly still. Only his eyes moved, tracking his mother's face. When she finished, silence stretched between them like a canyon. Finally, Dante spoke. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because they would have killed you." Isla's voice cracked. "Callista has resources, seers, enforcers. If she'd known you existed, she would have hunted us down and eliminated the threat to her son's inheritance. I couldn't, I couldn't lose you. So you lied for 18 years. You told me my father was a human who died in a car crash. You told me we were broken, defective, medical anomalies. I kept you alive. Dante stood abruptly. The chair scraped linoleum. He walked to the window and stared at rain-slicked Portland streets. Somewhere distant, a siren wailed. He has other sons, Dante said quietly. Doesn't he? Isla nodded, though he couldn't see her. Two, Alaric is 19, Ronan is 18. They're powerful, untouchable. They attend the Thornwell Academy. They'll inherit the Empire. The Empire that should have been mine. Dante, please, we have to leave. The enforcers you fought will report back. Callista's network will start searching. We have to run. Dante turned from the window. Streetlight cast half his face in shadow. His eyes caught the light like polished steel. I'm not running, Mom. Dante, he threw you away because you were a liability. He secured his legacy. He raised other sons in mansions while you scrubbed the floors and I ate expired canned food. Isla stood reaching for him. Please, don't do this. You don't understand how dangerous they are. Dante picked up the newspaper clipping. No. Kieran Thornwell stared back. Cold, powerful, untouchable. I'm going to Aspen, Dante said, his voice eerily calm. I'm going to enroll in his academy. I'm going to stand in his boardroom. And I'm going to take back everything he stole from us. They'll kill you. Let them try. The Thornwell Academy application deadline for Sovereign Rogue scholarships was 48 hours away. Dante spent those 2 days completing the application with surgical precision. Perfect test scores, flawless aptitude assessments, a personal essay revealing nothing and everything. The acceptance letter arrived 3 days later via overnight courier. Isla cried when she saw the envelope, but she didn't try to stop him again. She knew her son. She'd raised him to survive. But she'd also raised him with a spine of steel and a sense of justice that refused to bend. On a cold November morning, Dante loaded his single duffel bag into his battered 2004 Honda Civic. Isla stood on the sidewalk in her diner uniform, arms wrapped against the wind. Call me every day, she said. I will. Don't trust anyone. I won't. And Dante, her voice broke, don't lose yourself in revenge. You're better than they are. Remember that. Dante pulled his mother into a fierce embrace. She smelled like vanilla and coffee and 18 years of sacrifice. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby, so much. He climbed into the car. The engine coughed to life. As he pulled from the curb, he looked in the rearview mirror and saw his mother standing alone on the sidewalk, one hand raised in farewell. He didn't look back again. The drive from Portland to Aspen took 14 hours. Dante drove through the night, stopping only for gas and black coffee. The landscape transformed around him. Flat plains became foothills. Foothills rose into mountains. Snow appeared on peaks glittering white against dark pine forests. By the time he reached Aspen, dawn broke over the Rockies, painting the sky gold and rose. The Thornwell Academy nestled against the mountains like a fortress. The main gate was wrought iron forged to look like intertwined thorns. Beyond it, buildings of glass and black steel radiated wealth. The student parking lot overflowed with luxury vehicles. Aston Martins, Porsches, custom Range Rovers. Dante's Honda Civic looked like a rust bucket in comparison. He didn't care. He parked in the farthest corner, shouldered his duffel, and walked toward the main administration building. Students arrived for winter semester, moving in clusters, their designer clothes and confident postures marking them as pack elite. Future alphas, corporate heirs, the next generation who would run global logistics empires and private security firms. Dante kept his head down, simple jeans and a canvas jacket, scuffed boots. He looked exactly like his application claimed, a rogue from the Pacific Northwest with no pack affiliation and no family wealth. No one looked twice. The administration office assigned him a dormitory room and class schedule. Macroeconomics, pack law, supply chain management, advanced combat and strategy. His roommate was Kai Zhang, son of the Thornwell Enterprises CFO. Kai was lean and sharp-eyed with the quiet intelligence of someone who preferred observation to confrontation. He sized Dante up in 3 seconds and offered a handshake. Kai, Dante, Sovereign Rogue Scholarship. Yeah, me too. Well, not the rogue part, but the scholarship. My dad's CFO, but pack politics are complicated. Kai shrugged. You'll figure it out. Welcome to the Lion's Den. The first week blurred with classes and careful observation. Dante attended lectures and took meticulous notes. He studied hierarchies, social structures, the invisible web of alliances and rivalries governing the academy, and he watched his half-brothers. Alaric Thornwell was 19 tall and aristocratic with dark hair and his mother's sharp cheekbones. He moved through halls like royalty surrounded by sycophants, charming when it suited him, casually cruel when it didn't. He wore his future inheritance like a crown. Ronan Thornwell was 18, built like a heavyweight fighter, volatile and aggressive. He served as Alaric's enforcer, the muscle backing up his brother's ambition. Where Alaric used words as weapons, Ronan preferred fists. Dante watched from the periphery, memorized their schedules, their habits, their weaknesses. He was patient. Then came the advanced combat seminar. The combat arena occupied a subterranean amphitheater beneath the main academic building. Reinforced titanium mesh floor, impact-resistant padding on walls, harsh white overhead lights. Instructor Vincent Cross stood at the arena's center, arms crossed. A scarred veteran beta in his 50s, heavily muscled and devoid of sympathy. He'd served as master-at-arms for the Thornwell Pack for 30 years. 30 students stood at attention around the mat's perimeter. "We do not fight like street dogs," Vincent barked, voice echoing off concrete walls. "A Thornwell wolf fights with calculation. You break the enemy's structure before you break their bones. Dominance is psychological before physical." Alaric stepped onto the center mat, unbuttoning his tailored cuffs with deliberate slowness. He'd already dispatched 3 challengers that morning with brutal efficiency, using his dense alpha aura to force submission before the first punch. He scanned the room. His dark eyes landed on Dante, standing silent and still in the back row. A cruel smile played across his lips. "The charity case," he said, voice carrying across the arena. "Let's see if the Sovereign Rogue program is a waste of PAC's funds. Step up, Marlowe." The room went silent. A rogue challenging the heir was tantamount to suicide. Dante didn't hesitate. He walked forward with fluid, unhurried steps. Standard-issue gray sweatpants and a fitted black t-shirt that did nothing to hide coiled muscle. As he approached the mat, every eye tracked his movement. Vincent Cross watched with narrowed eyes. Alaric flared his aura immediately, a heavy, suffocating wave meant to force submission. It crashed against Dante like a physical wall. Dante didn't even blink. He'd spent 18 years suppressing raw, ancient alpha power that made Alaric's spoiled, untested energy look like a candle flame beside a forest fire. He kept his own aura locked down tight, projecting nothing but terrifying calm. "You should yield, rogue," Alaric said, insulted by the lack of reaction. "I'll break your jaw." "Try," Dante replied. His voice was a low, vibrating rumble that raised the hairs on Vincent Cross's neck. Alaric lunged. He shifted his face partially into wolf form, extending fangs, swinging a devastating right hook designed to shatter bone. Dante didn't shift, didn't use claws. He relied entirely on brutal mechanical efficiency of street survival. He sidestepped the blow by a fraction of an inch, grabbed Alaric's extended arm, and used the air's momentum against him. With a sickening crack, Dante dislocated Alaric's shoulder and swept his legs in one smooth motion. Before Alaric could even roar in pain, Dante was on top of him. Knee pressed directly into Alaric's windpipe, cutting airflow. The entire arena gasped. Ronan surged forward with a snarl, but Vincent Cross snapped his fingers. "Hold position, Ronan. The match is legitimate." Beneath Dante, Alaric thrashed, dark eyes wide with panic and humiliation. He tried to push his alpha aura onto Dante again, but it shattered against Dante's mental wall like glass against a vault door. Dante leaned down, face inches from Alaric's. For a microsecond, he let control slip. His eyes bled from hazel into blazing glacial blue. Alaric froze. Primal terror locked his muscles. He felt the true, undeniable weight of a king. "Yield," Dante commanded softly. "Not a request, a physical law." Alaric tapped the mat frantically. Dante released him instantly, stood, smoothed his shirt as if he'd just finished folding laundry, and walked off the mat without looking at stunned faces around him. Vincent Cross watched the young man leave. His mind raced. He'd seen that exact fighting stance, that ruthless, calculating calm, and those piercing eyes only once before, 20 years ago, in a young Kieran Thornwell. 30 miles away in the glass-enclosed penthouse boardroom of Thornwell Enterprises, Kieran Thornwell sat at the head of a mahogany conference table. At 40, he was still imposing, silver threading his dark hair at the temples. His eyes were as cold as ever, but the lines around them had deepened with years of sleepless nights and choices that hollowed a man from inside. His phone buzzed, an encrypted message from Darius Wolfe, his head of security. "Alpha, you need to see this. Urgent. Kieran frowned and opened the attached video file. Security footage from the Academy Combat Arena, timestamped 30 minutes ago. Kieran watched a young man in a black t-shirt step onto the mat, broad shoulders, dark hair, confident stance. The young man defeated Alaric in under 30 seconds. Then for just a moment, the camera caught his face in profile as he turned to leave. Kieran Thornwell's tablet slipped from his hands and clattered onto the table. His entire body went rigid. The jawline, the build, the way he moved, and the eyes, those inherited Thornwell eyes. Kieran's breath came in short, sharp gasps. His hands trembled as he picked up the tablet and played the video again. And again. It wasn't possible. Isla had died 18 years ago. Darius had confirmed it. Car accident. No survivors. But the young man on the screen? Kieran's phone rang. Darius. Who is he? Kieran's voice was barely above a whisper. His name is Dante Marlowe Alpha. Sovereign Rogue Scholarship. Origin listed as Portland, Oregon. 18 years old. Marlowe, Isla's surname? Portland, where the Greyhound bus had terminated 18 years ago. 18 years old. The math was devastatingly simple. Kieran stood abruptly, chair clattering backwards. Other board members in the conference room stared in confusion. He didn't see them. He walked to floor-to-ceiling windows and stared at snow-capped mountains. Somewhere out there in his own academy walked a ghost, or a reckoning. Kieran pressed his forehead against cold glass and closed his eyes. And for the first time in 18 years, he allowed himself to hope that the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd believed dead, might still be alive. And the boy with his eyes might be his son. Winter came early to Aspen that year. By December's second week, snow-blanketed mountain peaks in thick white silence, temperatures dropping low enough to freeze breath in the air. The Thornwell Academy settled into its rhythm. Classes, combat training, endless jockeying for position among future pack leaders who measured worth in bloodlines and bank accounts. Dante moved through it all like a shadow. He attended lectures on macroeconomics and supply chain logistics, absorbing the inner workings of his father's empire. He studied pack law, learning arcane rules governing territorial disputes and inheritance rights. He trained in the combat arena, careful now, to keep his true strength hidden, to never again let his ancestral eyes show. That single slip against Alaric had been enough. The academy buzzed with rumors. Who was the rogue who'd humiliated the heir? Where had he learned to fight like that? Why did instructor Vincent Cross watch him with such intense, unreadable focus during every training session? Dante ignored it all. He hadn't come to make friends or win popularity contests. He'd come to understand, to learn, to find the fractures in the empire his father built, and then bring it all crashing down. The opportunity arrived in the form of a winter internship program. Every year, Thornwell Enterprises offered coveted positions to top-performing academy students. Most interns fetched coffee for executives and filed paperwork, but Dante had no interest in glamorous departments. He volunteered for the data migration project in the IT division, buried deep in subterranean server rooms of the downtown Thornwell building. Unglamorous work. Tedious. The kind of assignment that made other students wrinkle their noses in disdain. It was perfect. Kai Zhang raised an eyebrow when Dante accepted the position. You know, that's basically digital janitorial work, right? You'll be copying files and updating databases while other interns network with VPs. I like computers, Dante said simply. Kai studied him for a long moment, then shrugged. Your funeral. But over the following weeks, Kai began to notice patterns. Dante returning to the dorm past midnight, clothes smelling like server rooms and electrical equipment, the way his roommate's eyes tracked financial news with unusual intensity, the coded messages on Dante's laptop screen before he quickly minimized Windows. One night, Kai waited up. When Dante slipped in at 2 a.m., Kai was sitting at his desk, lamp on arms crossed. We need to talk, Kai said quietly. Dante stopped, assessed. About what? About whatever you're really doing in those server rooms, because it's not data migration. A long silence stretched between them. Why do you care? Dante asked finally. Because my father is CFO of a company that's rotting from the inside and he's too scared to do anything about it. Because I've watched Callista Ravencroft bleed this pack dry for years while everyone pretends not to notice. Because, Kai exhaled, because I think you might actually end here to do something about it. Dante sat on his bed, elbows on knees. And if I am, then I can help. I know the system, I know where the bodies are buried, and I know my father keeps duplicate records of everything Callista touches because he's terrified she'll eventually make him the scapegoat. Why would you risk that? Kai's jaw tightened. Because I'm tired of being afraid. Aren't you? Dante looked at his roommate, this sharp-eyed son of a compromised CFO who'd somehow found his spine. An unexpected ally in a world of enemies. All right, Dante said. Here's what I found so far. The server room hummed with constant white noise of cooling fans and hard drives spinning at high speed. Dante sat before three monitors, blue glow reflecting off his face in the darkened room. 11 o'clock on a Friday night. The rest of IT had gone home hours ago. He worked alone. His official assignment was migrating legacy financial data from old servers to a new cloud-based system. Simple copy and paste. Mindless work requiring security clearance but not much intelligence. Except Dante had spent 3 weeks writing ghost protocols. Lines of code slipping through the corporate firewall like smoke through a screen door. Invisible. Untraceable. Giving him access to files locked behind layers of encryption. He wasn't just migrating data, he was following the money. First irregularities appeared in charitable foundation accounts. The Thornwell Foundation donated millions yearly to wildlife, conservation education programs, scholarship funds, noble causes, tax deductible. But when Dante traced actual cash flows, the numbers didn't match. Money went into foundation accounts, but it didn't flow to listed recipients. Instead, it was rerouted through a complex web of shell companies. Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Isle of Man, the kind of offshore structures designed specifically to hide financial movement from regulatory oversight. Dante's fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling thread after thread. Each shell company led to another. Each account revealed deeper misdirection layers. And all of it, every single dollar, traced back to one person. Callista Ravencroft Thornwell. The Luna was bleeding the pack dry. Millions diverted from pension funds, charity accounts, operational budgets. All of it funneled into offshore holdings under her control. Dante sat back, exhaling slowly. He'd found the rot. But as he dug deeper, something else emerged. Something complicating the simple narrative of a greedy villain stealing from her own pack. The shell companies weren't just holding money, they were spending it on military contractors, private security firms, weapons purchases, intelligence gathering. Callista was building an army. Dante frowned and pulled up another file set, heavily encrypted, but his ghost protocols wormed through defenses. Classified intelligence reports, threat assessments, surveillance footage. The target of this military buildup wasn't internal. It was external. The Corvus Syndicate, a European pack alliance based in London and Paris with territorial holdings across the continent. According to intelligence reports, Corvus had been quietly acquiring shares in Thornwell Enterprises for 5 years, buying debt, influencing board members, positioning for hostile takeover. And Kieran Thornwell either didn't know or didn't care, but Callista did. Dante scrolled through intercepted communications. Callista's private messages to security contractors. Her instructions were clear and clinical. Build defensive capacity. Prepare for corporate warfare. Protect the pack's holdings at any cost. She wasn't embezzling for greed. She was embezzling for survival. Dante leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at the screens. The woman who'd threatened to kill him in the womb, who'd forced his mother into 18 years of poverty and fear, wasn't the simple villain he'd imagined. She was a survivor, a strategist, a woman who'd recognized a threat everyone else ignored. It didn't excuse what she'd done to Isla, didn't absolve her of cruelty and manipulation, but it made her human, and that complicated everything. Dante downloaded the files onto a heavy silver flash drive. All of it. Embezzlement records, military contracts. Corvus Syndicate intelligence. He encrypted the drive with a password only he knew and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Then he began setting up the dead man's switch. If he didn't log into a specific server every 24 hours, the files would automatically email to every pack elder, every board member of Thornwell Enterprises, and the Supernatural Investigative Division of the FBI. He was bulletproof now, or as close as a rogue with no pack could be. Dante shut down the monitors, grabbed his canvas jacket, and headed for the elevators. 9 o'clock Friday night, executive floors deserted. Cleaning crews wouldn't arrive until after midnight. He stepped into the private glass elevator and pressed the lobby button. The doors were sliding shut when a large hand caught the frame. They reopened. Kieran Thornwell stepped inside. The air in the enclosed space transformed instantly. Kieran radiated the heavy presence of a ruling alpha. Pine and snow and granite. The scent of old power and older grief. He wore a tailored charcoal suit jacket, unbuttoned, tie loosened. He looked exhausted. The lines around his eyes deeper than in the newspaper photograph Dante had memorized. Dante kept his head slightly bowed, playing the invisible intern. He shifted to the far corner, making himself smaller, less noticeable. The doors closed. The elevator began its smooth descent. The silence was oppressive. The cable mechanism's hum seemed abnormally loud. Kieran glanced at the young man beside him, noticed the cheap canvas jacket out of place in the billionaire's tower. But then his heightened senses caught something else. A scent, buried deep under layers of soap and server room chemicals. Faint, almost imperceptible, but achingly, devastatingly familiar. Vanilla and old paper and something wild underneath. Kieran's breath hitched. He turned slightly, studying the young man's profile. Broad shoulders, dark hair, the sharp line of his jaw. "You're working late," Kieran said. His deep voice broke the silence. "Data migration doesn't sleep, sir." The voice hit Kieran like a physical blow. The timbre, the resonance. It vibrated at the exact frequency as his own. Kieran shifted his stance, turning fully to face the young man. "Look at me, son." The word hung in the air, unintentional, automatic. Dante slowly turned his head, raised his chin, allowing harsh fluorescent light to illuminate his face fully, met the Alpha's gaze directly, and Kieran Thornwell stopped breathing. The leather portfolio in his hand slipped from his fingers and hit the elevator floor with a loud slap. Neither looked down. Kieran stared into a mirror reflecting his own face from 20 years ago. The jawline, the broad shoulders, the dark hair that never stayed neat. But it was the eyes that destroyed him, those piercing glacial eyes. The Thornwell bloodline, undiluted and unmistakable, passed down through centuries of Alphas, looking at him from the face of a stranger. Except not a stranger. Kieran's mouth moved, but no sound came at first. His heart hammered against his ribs hard enough to crack bone. His hands trembled. "Who?" His voice cracked completely. The Alpha facade shattered like glass. "What is your name?" Dante looked at the man who'd abandoned his mother to starve. Who'd rejected her before witnesses and cast her out like garbage. Who'd raised other sons in mansions, while Dante ate expired canned food and his mother worked herself to exhaustion. He felt no warmth, no desire for a father's embrace, no longing for reconciliation. He felt only the cold metallic weight of the flash drive in his pocket and the satisfaction of watching a king realize his kingdom was built on sand. "My name is Dante," he said softly. His voice dropped into a register that was calm, controlled, utterly merciless. "Dante Marlowe." The name struck Kieran like a warhammer to the chest. Marlowe. Isla's surname. Portland, Oregon. 18 years old. The math was simple. Brutal. Undeniable. Kieran staggered backward until his shoulders hit the glass wall. All color drained from his face. His legs buckled slightly, and he had to brace against the railing to stay upright. "Isla," he whispered. The name came out like a prayer, like a confession. "Is she?" The elevator dinged. Doors slid open to the empty marble lobby. Dante bent down, picked up Kieran's dropped portfolio and held it out politely. Their eyes met again, inherited blue to inherited blue. "My mother raised me alone for 18 years while you lived in a tower," Dante said quietly. "She scrubbed floors so I could eat. She worked double shifts so I could have clothes. And every single day she told me my father was dead." He placed the portfolio in Kieran's trembling hands. She wasn't wrong. Dante walked out into the winter night, leaving the Alpha of the Aspen Pack alone in a glass box, suffocating under the crushing weight of his own choices. Kieran Thornwell didn't go home that night. He remained in his penthouse office long after the elevator deposited him back on the executive floor. Heavy oak doors locked, security protocols engaged, blinds drawn against the glittering snow-dusted skyline. He sat behind his massive mahogany desk with a glass of 50-year-old Macallan Scotch he couldn't bring himself to drink. His hands shook too badly to lift it. Dante Marlowe. The name echoed through the silent room like a death knell. Kieran pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and opened the Thornwell Academy database. Typed in the name. The profile loaded, a standard identification photo. Dante stared at the camera with neutral expression, but those eyes burned even through the digital image. Kieran clicked through the admission file with growing horror and wonder. Sovereign Rogue Scholarship. Origin, Portland, Oregon. Age 18. No listed pack affiliation. No family ties. No emergency contact. Alone. The way Isla had been alone 18 years ago when she stepped onto that Greyhound bus. Kieran's mind raced backward through time. The rejection ceremony. Isla's face pale and stricken as he spoke ritual words. The way she'd touched her stomach just for a moment before collapsing. He'd thought it was just the bond breaking. He'd been catastrophically wrong. She'd been pregnant, carrying his child, and he'd cast her out. Then Callista had told him Isla was dead. Car accident. No survivors. Darius had confirmed it, shown him the accident report, the death certificate. Kieran grabbed his encrypted phone and dialed. It rang once. Alpha? Darius Wolf's voice was gravelly alert despite the late hour. My office. Now. And bring every piece of documentation related to Isla Marlowe's death 18 years ago. A pause. A very long pause. Sir, I. Now Darius. 20 minutes later, Darius Wolf stood before Kieran's desk, a massive man battle-scarred and loyal who'd served the Thornwell Pack for 30 years. He held a manila folder. His expression was carefully neutral, but his scent carried the acrid tang of guilt. Kieran stood at the window, back to his security chief, shoulders rigid. Tell me the truth, Kieran said quietly. All of it. Darius set the folder on the desk. The accident report was falsified, Alpha. There was no car crash. Isla Marlowe boarded a bus to Portland and disappeared. I reported her as deceased. On whose orders? The silence stretched. Whose orders, Darius? Luna Callista's. Darius's voice was flat, professional, but underneath Kieran heard decades of compromise. She came to me the day after the rejection ceremony. She had evidence of your father's embezzlement from PAC funds. Millions hidden in offshore accounts. She said if I didn't falsify Isla's death report, she'd release the information to PAC elders in the FBI. Your father's legacy would be destroyed. The PAC would fracture. You'd lose everything. Kieran turned slowly. His eyes were molten with rage. So you chose my father's reputation over truth, over Isla's life. I chose the PAC's stability, Alpha. You were 22, grieving, unprepared. If the embezzlement scandal had broken, then the Ravencroft family would have absorbed Thornwell Enterprises in the chaos. Everything your father built would have been lost. And Isla, I tracked her to Portland. I confirmed she was alive and pregnant. Darius's voice finally cracked. I reported back to Luna Callista. She ordered me to let her go, to let you believe she was dead. She said it was better that way. Cleaner. Cleaner. Kieran's voice was a low growl. His alpha aura flared, crackling through the room like electricity. You let me believe the woman I loved was dead. You let me grieve for 18 years, while my son grew up eating scraps and my mate worked herself to exhaustion. I know, Alpha. I've carried the guilt every day since. Get out of my sight. Sir, get out. Darius left without another word, closing the door quietly behind him. Kieran was alone again. He walked to the mahogany desk and opened the falsified accident report. Looked at the forged death certificate. 18 years of his life built on a lie. He'd mourned Isla. Isla visited the location of the supposed accident every year on the anniversary, tried to honor her memory by being the Alpha she would have wanted him to be, and all of it had been theater, performance, built on Callista's manipulation and Darius's cowardice. His son was alive, Isla was alive, and they'd both survive without him. The grief and rage that crashed through Kieran was indescribable. He swept everything off his desk in a single violent motion. Glass shattered, papers scattered, the 50-year-old scotch exploded across marble floor. And then Kieran Thornwell, Alpha of the Aspen Pack billionaire CEO, dropped to his knees in the wreckage and wept. Word of Dante's victory over Alaric spread through the academy like wildfire. By the second week's end, every student knew the story. The rogue who'd humiliated the heir. The nobody who'd beaten Alpha blood in single combat. The natural order had been disrupted, and hierarchies built on assumed superiority don't tolerate disruption. Dante was crossing the frost-covered courtyard toward the library when his path was blocked. Ronan Thornwell stood waiting, flanked by 4 other Alpha candidates, all heavily muscled, radiating aggression. Morning sun glinted off fresh snow. Students stopped walking, forming a wide circle. Pack theater, public challenge, blood sport disguised as hierarchy enforcement. Rogue, Ronan's voice dripped contempt. You think you're untouchable because you got a lucky shot on my brother. You don't belong here. You smell like a stray. Dante stopped, didn't tense his muscles. Hands rested casually in his canvas jacket pockets, expression utterly calm. Step aside, Ronan. An Alpha command wrapped in conversational velvet. Air pressure in the courtyard shifted subtly. Ronan bristled. His eyes flashed yellow as his wolf pushed against his skin. Or what? You'll try that parlor trick on me too. He began to shift. Bones cracked audibly as his jaw elongated. Thick gray fur erupted along his forearms. Hands transformed into massive claws tipped with black talons. The crowd gasped and stepped back. A partial shift in the academy courtyard was severe code violation. But Ronan was the alpha son. Rules didn't apply. Dante sighed, a sound of profound boredom. Then as Ronan lunged with a roar tearing from his distorted throat, Dante finally stopped suppressing his aura. He didn't shift, didn't even remove his hands from his pockets. He simply released the invisible crushing weight of his true bloodline. The air shimmered, reality seemed to bend. An almost visible shockwave of pure ancient alpha dominance exploded outward from Dante's center like a bomb detonating in slow motion. So heavy, so overwhelmingly pure and absolute that several beta students in the crowd instantly dropped to their knees. Hands clutched chests. They gasped for air as their wolves folded under pressure they'd never experienced. Ronan hit the wall of Dante's aura in mid-lunge and collapsed. The dominance slammed him into cobblestones hard enough to crack stone. His partial shift reversed violently, bones snapping back into human configuration, fur receding as his body was forcibly returned to original form under the sheer authority of a superior king. He lay on freezing ground, choking, unable to lift his head. Blood trickled from his nose. His eyes were wide with animal terror. Dante walked forward, stepped over Ronan's twitching form without a downward glance. He looked at the 4 alpha candidates who'd flanked Ronan. They trembled, their wolves completely subjugated. "If any of you block my path again," Dante said quietly, his voice carrying across the dead silent courtyard, "I won't just bruise your pride. I will break your spine. Am I understood?" The 4 alphas lowered their heads in simultaneous involuntary submission, baring their necks to the superior predator. Dante continued walking toward the library as if nothing had happened. Behind him, students slowly began to breathe again. From a 3rd-floor window overlooking the courtyard, Callista Ravencroft Thornwell watched the entire display. Her perfectly manicured fingernails dug into the oak windowsill hard enough to draw blood. She didn't notice. Her entire focus locked on the young man walking away from her son's broken form. Beside her stood a nervous IT security supervisor holding a printed sheet of badge access logs. "The intern who was with Alpha Kieran in the elevator last Friday night," the supervisor said, voice shaking slightly. "His name is Dante Marlowe Luna, and according to our systems, he's been accessing Classivoice financial servers for 3 weeks." Callista's blood turned to ice. Marlowe, the pathetic beta archivist's surname. She'd dealt with Isola Marlowe 18 years ago, paid Darius to falsify a death report, ensured Kieran would grieve and move forward without ever knowing about the pregnancy. But she'd underestimated a mother's desperation to protect her child. Callista looked back down at the courtyard, at Dante's retreating form, the broad shoulders, the confident stride, the way other wolves instinctively moved out of his path. She'd seen that walk before. In Kieran. In old portraits of Kieran's father and grandfather. The Thornwell bloodline pure and undiluted. And the boy was 18 years old. The math was devastatingly simple. "He knows," Callista whispered. Panic sliced through her iron composure like a hot knife. "Kieran knows. That's why he won't sign Alaric's promotion papers. He's going to legitimize the bastard." She turned to the IT supervisor. "Get out, and if you speak of this to anyone, I'll have your entire family hunted down and eliminated. Am I clear?" The man fled. Callista stood alone at the window, her mind racing through scenarios and contingencies. The Winter Solstice Gala was in 3 days. Every board member, pack elder, and European investor would gather in one place. If Dante revealed his identity publicly at the gala with witnesses and undeniable proof, Alaric's claim to the Thornwell inheritance would be nullified. Pack law was absolute. The firstborn son of a true fated mate superseded all political arrangements. She'd lose everything. Her sons would lose everything. 20 years of strategic positioning and ruthless consolidation, all destroyed by a ghost from Kieran's past. Callista pulled out her encrypted phone and made a call. It rang twice before a smooth, accented voice answered. "Callista, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "I need the Silver Vanguard team," she said. Her voice was steady now. "Clinical. The Geneva contractors. Full tactical loadout." "For what purpose?" "There's a security threat at the gala. A rogue with stolen corporate intelligence. I want him eliminated before he enters the building. Cost? 3 million. Wired to your usual account within the hour." "Consider it done." Callista hung up. She looked back down at the courtyard, now empty, except for Ronan being helped to his feet by embarrassed friends. She felt no guilt about ordering an 18-year-old boy's death. She'd murdered her own conscience years ago, one necessary compromise at a time. Survival required ruthlessness, and Callista Ravencroft Thornwell intended to survive. Dante sat alone in the empty library surrounded by the smell of old leather and ancient paper. The same library where his mother had worked 18 years ago, where she'd met Kieran, where promises had been made in shadows of dusty tomes. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "They're coming for you, Silver Vanguard mercenaries, hired by Callista, Gala Night, wine cellar entrance. Be ready." D.W. Dante stared at the message. D.W. Darius Wolfe. The head of security was warning him. Either Darius had grown a conscience or he was playing a deeper game. Didn't matter. Dante had already planned for this contingency. He pulled out the silver flash drive and checked the dead man's switch. Active, files encrypted, and ready to deploy. If they killed him, the truth would still emerge. But he didn't intend to die. Another text arrived. This one from Kaijong. "My father wants to meet with you. Tonight. Says he has information about Callista's endgame. Can you trust him?" Dante considered. Then typed back, where and when. Kai's response was immediate. His office. "Thornwell Building. 10 p.m. I'll be there too. You're not walking into this alone." Dante smiled slightly. Unexpected allies in a world of enemies. He opened his phone and composed a text to his mother. "Mom, I need you to come to Aspen. I've arranged everything. First-class ticket, private car. Please trust me. It's time to stop running." The reply came within seconds. "Dante, no. If Kieran sees me, if Callista finds out, she's already found out. It's happening whether we want it or not. But this time you don't have to face them alone. I'll be there, I promise. Please come." A long pause, then, "Send me the details. I love you, baby. I love you too, Mom." Dante set down his phone and looked around the library. He imagined his mother here. Young, hopeful, surrounded by books and dreams. Then he imagined her standing in that boardroom 18 years ago. Pregnant, terrified, cast out like garbage. The cold rage that settled into his bones wasn't hot or explosive. It was methodical, patient, absolute. In 3 days, the Winter Solstice Gala would bring together everyone who'd enabled his mother's suffering. The pack elders who'd valued corporate mergers over a young woman's life. The board members who'd profited from a system built on forced bonds and political marriages. Callista, who'd threatened to murder him in the womb. Kieran, who'd chosen his empire over his mate. And Dante would stand before all of them with irrefutable proof of their corruption. Not for revenge, for justice. And for the woman who'd given up everything to keep him alive. The library's antique clock chimed 9 times each bell, resonating through the vast, silent space. Dante stood, shouldered his backpack, and walked out into the winter night to prepare for the reckoning that had been 18 years in the making. The St. Regis Aspen Resort glittered like a jewel box against snow-covered mountains. The Winter Solstice Gala was the undisputed pinnacle of werewolf high society. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. Ice sculptures depicting wolves and mountain peaks lined the grand ballroom. Champagne flowed from fountains. The air hummed with wealth and power and the carefully orchestrated pretense of civilization. Callista Ravencroft Thornwell held court near the room's center, draped in an emerald gown that caught light like serpent scales. Diamonds dripped from her throat and wrists. She smiled at investors and pack elders, projecting absolute control. But beneath the polished surface, her heart hammered with cold calculation. The Silver Vanguard mercenaries had confirmed position 30 minutes ago. Target acquired in subterranean wine cellar. Moving to eliminate. By midnight, Kieran would be forced by the Pack Council to officially name Alaric as Vice President of Logistics, the final key to securing her son's inheritance. And the ghost from the past would be buried in a frozen ravine before the first course was served. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Deep beneath the gilded ballroom in the cavernous wine cellar of the St. Regis Heir was thick with oak barrels and vintage Bordeaux. Rows of bottles stretched into shadowed alcoves, their labels bearing dates from centuries past. Dante Marlowe stood alone among the oldest vintages waiting. He wore an immaculate charcoal suit purchased that morning with funds quietly siphoned from Callista's own offshore accounts. The irony pleased him. The jacket fit perfectly across his broad shoulders. His eyes reflected dim amber lighting like polished steel. He hadn't come to hide. He'd come to survive long enough to finish what he started. The mercenaries entered through the service entrance with professional silence. 3 of them. Tactical Kevlar under expensive suits. Silver-laced concussive rifles held ready. They moved through wine racks like shadows trained and efficient. They'd been told the target was an 18-year-old rogue. Alone, unprotected. They had no idea what they were hunting. Dante let them get close. Let them think they had advantage. His heartbeat remained slow, controlled. His wolf coiled inside him like a loaded spring, waiting for permission to strike. The lead mercenary stepped past a rack of Chateau Margaux rifle raised. Dante moved. He didn't use weapons. He reached out with supernatural speed, hand locking onto the man's tactical vest, and hurled him through a solid oak wine rack with the force of a freight train. Wood splintered. Thousands of dollars of red wine exploded into the air like arterial spray. Glass shattered in cascading waves. The other two mercenaries spun raising rifles. Dante's eyes ignited into blazing glacial blue. He dropped his alpha aura like an anvil. The sheer suffocating pressure hit the human mercenaries like a physical wall. Their nervous systems short-circuited. Fingers went numb on triggers. Vision tunneled. The primal part of their brains, the ancient lizard cortex recognizing apex predators, screamed at them to submit or die. In two fluid, brutal motions, Dante disarmed them both. A strike to the wrist that shattered bone, a knee to the solar plexus that collapsed lungs. They dropped unconscious before they could process what happened. Dante straightened his tie, adjusted his cuffs, wiped a single drop of wine from his lapel with clinical precision. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a text to the email address Darius Wolf had provided. "Thank you for the warning. Tell Callista her mercenaries failed. I'm coming upstairs now." He stepped over the unconscious bodies and made his way to the elevators. It was time to join the party. Upstairs, a hush fell over the grand ballroom as Alpha Kieran Thornwell took the stage. He looked exhausted. Shadows under his eyes stark against harsh spotlight. His eyes, usually so cold and commanding, carried a weight that made him look older than 40. Pack elders sat at front tables, watching with hawkish expectation. Board members whispered among themselves. European investors sipped champagne and waited for formalities to conclude so they could return to discussing quarterly returns. Callista stood off to the side, expression serene. Victorious. Kieran gripped the podium's edges. His knuckles were white. "Honored elders, esteemed guests, and members of the Thornwell pack," he began. His deep voice echoed through the sound system, but it lacked usual authority. "Tonight we gather to secure our empire's future." He paused, looked toward Callista. She gave him a small, encouraging nod, the gesture of a supportive wife. It made him sick. "It has been proposed that my son Alaric—" The massive mahogany double doors at the ballroom's back slammed open with a deafening crack. The string quartet stopped mid-note. 500 heads turned simultaneously. Dante Marlowe strode into the ballroom. He walked like he owned the building, like he owned every soul inside it. His charcoal suit was immaculate. His eyes swept the room with calm assessment. He moved with the fluid confidence of someone who'd already won and was simply waiting for everyone else to realize it. Behind him, dragged by the collar of his tactical vest, was the lead Silver Vanguard mercenary. Conscious now but battered, blood dripped from his nose onto polished marble. Dante hauled the man to the front and released him. The mercenary collapsed at the pack elder's table. "Apologies for the interruption," Dante said. His voice carried effortlessly across the vast space without amplification. "But I believe the pack elders and the independent auditors from KPMG, sitting at table 4, will want to see tonight's real presentation." Callista's champagne flute slipped from her fingers. It shattered against marble, the sound unnaturally loud in stunned silence. "Guards!" she shrieked. Her composure shattered completely. "Kill him! He's a rogue assassin!" "Stand down!" Kieran roared from the podium. His alpha aura exploded outward, freezing the security detail in their tracks. He stepped away from the microphone, eyes locked entirely on Dante. Every instinct screamed that this was his son. Dante pulled a small silver remote from his pocket and pressed a button. The massive digital screens flanking the stage, meant to display the Thornwell corporate logo, suddenly flickered. They illuminated with irrefutable evidence. Bank ledgers, encrypted emails, offshore account numbers in the Cayman Islands, invoices for black market weaponry and private military contractors. "For the past 5 years," Dante announced, voice ringing with absolute command, "Luna Callista Ravencroft Thornwell has been embezzling hundreds of millions of dollars from the Thornwell Pack pension funds, charitable trusts, and operational accounts." The ballroom erupted into chaos. Pack elders shot to their feet, eyes flashing with feral outrage. KPMG auditors scrambled for tablets, faces pale as they cross-referenced displayed data. Callista's brother, who'd flown in from London for the gala, stepped away from his sister as if she carried plague. She has used this money, Dante continued, to fund a private mercenary army with the express intent of defending Thornwell Holdings against the Corvus Syndicate's planned hostile takeover. He pressed the remote again. Screens changed, intelligence reports, surveillance footage of European PAC operatives, documentation of stock purchases and debt acquisition. The Corvus Syndicate has spent 5 years positioning themselves to absorb Thornwell Enterprises, and your Luna recognized the threat when no one else did. That stopped the chaos cold. Confusion rippled through the crowd. This wasn't a simple embezzlement scandal. This was something far more complex. Callista stood frozen, her emerald gown suddenly looking less like armor and more like a costume. Her carefully constructed mask cracked. "It's a lie!" Alaric screamed from the stage's side. He shifted his hands into claws and lunged at Dante. "I'll rip your throat out, you bastard!" Dante didn't even turn his head. As Alaric closed the distance, Dante simply released a fraction of his aura. Just enough. The pressure hit Alaric like a concrete wall. He dropped to his knees instantly, gasping for breath, completely subjugated by a force he'd never experienced. The entire ballroom felt it. The crushing weight of ancient bloodline, pure, undiluted, absolute. "I am not finished," Dante said softly. But every person in the room heard him. He looked directly at the Pack Elders. By Pack law, an Alpha's empire cannot be inherited by a traitor's blood. It certainly cannot be inherited by lies and manipulation. No one breathed, and then from the open doors at the ballroom's back, the sharp, rhythmic click of heels echoed across marble. The crowd parted instinctively, drawn by some primal recognition of importance. Isla Marlowe walked into the light. She was no longer the frightened 19-year-old girl shivering in a rain-soaked coat. She wore a midnight blue silk gown that caught light like deep water. Her hair fell in elegant waves around her shoulders. At 37, the years of hardship had carved strength into her features rather than breaking them. She radiated quiet, unbreakable dignity. And she walked straight down the center aisle, her eyes locked on the man who'd broken her heart 18 years ago. Kieran Thornwell made a sound like he'd been shot. His legs buckled. He staggered back from the podium, one hand pressed against his chest as if trying to hold his heart inside his body. The scent of vanilla and old paper crashed over him with the force of a tidal wave. Every memory he'd tried to bury. Every night he'd spent grieving at a false grave. Every year of emptiness and regret. She was alive. "Isla," he choked out, his eyes welled with tears. The alpha of the Aspen Pack billionaire, CEO ruler of a corporate empire, dropped to his knees right there on the stage, before 500 witnesses. "Isla, my mate." The words echoed through the ballroom. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew the story, the political marriage, the rejection of the lowly beta archivist, but no one had known she was his true fated mate until now. Isla stopped beside her son. She looked down at Kieran with an expression holding both profound sorrow and absolute closure. "I didn't come here for your apology, Kieran," she said quietly, but her voice carried. "I came here to watch my son take back what you stole from him." Dante stepped forward. He stood over his biological father, looking down with eyes cold as winter. "My name is Dante Marlowe," he addressed the Pack Elders. "I am the firstborn son of Alpha Kieran Thornwell and his true fated mate, Isla. I possess the unbroken Alpha bloodline of the Thornwell line." He pulled a folder from his jacket and handed it to the eldest Pack member, a silver-haired man named Elder Thorn. "Blood test results, birth certificate, genetic verification from 3 independent laboratories." Elder Thorn opened the folder with trembling hands. His eyes scanned documents, widened. He looked up at Dante, then at Kieran, then back at the papers. Slowly, Elder Thorn bowed his head, baring his neck in submission. "The blood does not lie," the elder proclaimed. His voice shook with the weight of what this meant. "By Pack law and ancient tradition, the firstborn son of a true fated mate holds rightful claim above all political arrangements." "No," Callista's voice cut through silence like broken glass. "No, this is impossible. She was dead. She died 18 years ago." "You lied to me," Kieran said. He stood slowly, turning to face his wife. His voice was eerily calm. "Dead. You told me she was dead. You falsified the report. You let me grieve for 18 years while my son grew up in poverty." "I protected this pack," Callista screamed, the polished facade completely gone now. "You were weak, distracted, mourning, that pathetic beta while our enemies circled. I did what was necessary to save everything your father built." "You threatened to kill my child in the womb," Ayla said. Her voice was quiet but carried steel underneath. You forced me to run, to hide, to raise my son alone while you lived in luxury built on stolen money. Callista looked around the ballroom, at pack elders staring with cold judgment, at board members calculating exit strategies, at her own sons, Alaric and Ronan, watching their mother's empire crumble. Everything I did, Callista said, her voice breaking, was to protect my boys. I was rejected too before Kieran, thrown away by my first mate for political convenience. I swore my sons would never suffer that fate. I built defenses because no one else would. For the first time, genuine emotion cracked through her armor. Not rage, not manipulation, fear, desperation. The terror of a woman who'd survived rejection and rebuilt herself through ruthless necessity. Dante looked at her, this woman who'd threatened his life before he was born, who'd driven his mother into poverty, who'd stolen millions and built armies. And he saw not a monster, but a survivor who'd perpetuated the same cycle of abuse that had broken her. You'll stand trial, Dante said, for embezzlement, for conspiracy, for every law you broke. Callista laughed bitterly. And then what? Execution, exile? Restorative justice. Dante's words silenced the room. You'll make reparations. You'll counsel other wolves trapped in forced matings. You'll help dismantle the system that created you. He turned to face the entire ballroom, because that's what this is really about. Not one woman's crimes, but a system that values corporate mergers over true mates, that forces political marriages and destroys lives for profit margins, that treats wolves like assets instead of people. He looked at the pack elders. I could claim the alpha title right now. By blood right, it's mine. But I don't want a crown built on the same corruption that destroyed my mother. Elder Thorne frowned. What are you proposing? Reform, transparency, a council structure where alphas are accountable, where forced matings are abolished, where truth matters more than tradition. And who would lead this reform? Another elder asked. Dante was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Kieran. My father failed catastrophically 18 years ago. He chose power over love, empire over family. But failure doesn't have to be forever. He addressed Kieran directly. You'll remain as alpha, but under a reformed council that includes my mother as elder of historical justice. You'll work under oversight. You'll prove you've learned. You'll earn your redemption through action, not words. Kieran's throat worked. Tears streamed down his face. I don't deserve that chance. No, Allah said quietly. You don't, but our son is giving it to you anyway, because he's better than both of us. The pack elders conferred in hushed whispers. Finally, Elder Thorne spoke. This is unprecedented, but these are unprecedented times. We vote to accept Dante Marlowe's proposal. Luna Callista will stand trial. Alpha Kieran will lead under Reformed Council oversight, and Dante Marlowe will serve as co-alpha alongside his half-brothers. At that, Alaric and Ronan, who'd been standing frozen at the stage's edge, looked at each other, then at Dante. Slowly, hesitantly, they approached. Alaric spoke first. His voice was rough. You're our brother. Biologically, yes, Dante said. Whether we're family is something we'll have to build. Ronan stared at him, the same young man who'd humiliated him in the courtyard, who he tried to destroy. I'm sorry, Ronan said. The words clearly cost him. I didn't know. You know now. Alaric extended his hand. Teach us. Please. Teach us to be better than our parents. Dante looked at the offered hand, then he took it. The ballroom watched in stunned silence as the three Thornwell brothers stood together for the first time. And then one by one the pack members began to bow their heads, not in submission to a conqueror, but in recognition of a new beginning. 6 months later, spring had returned to Aspen. The Thornwell Academy had undergone significant changes. New curriculum on ethics and consent, mandatory courses on recognizing and preventing abuse. The combat arena now taught defense, not dominance. Dante stood in the renovated pack library surrounded by the smell of old books and fresh paint. He wore simple jeans and a sweater. His eyes were softer now, still watchful but no longer carrying the weight of 18 years of secrets. Isla worked at a desk by the window cataloging historical documents of pack injustices. She'd been appointed Elder of Historical Justice responsible for documenting past wrongs and ensuring they were never repeated. Her official office was in the main Thornwell building, but she still preferred the library. Some things never changed. The door opened and Kieran entered. He looked different too. The arrogance had been stripped away. He wore casual clothes. He carried coffee in a paper cup, not expensive scotch in crystal. He was working his way back, one day at a time. The quarterly report is ready for council review, he said to Isla. I made sure to include the full audit trail you requested. Thank you, Kieran. The formality between them was careful, respectful. They weren't reconciled. They weren't in love, but they were learning to co-parent their sons in a way that honored the past without being destroyed by it. Kieran left without pushing for more. Dante watched his mother. She looked peaceful in a way he'd never seen before. The constant fear that had defined her for 18 years was gone. How are you feeling, Mom? He asked. Strange, Isla admitted. She smiled. Good strange. I never thought I'd see this place again. Never thought I'd be safe here. You are. I made sure of that. I know, baby. You did what I couldn't. You changed the world instead of just surviving it. Alaric and Ronan entered the library together. The relationship between the three brothers was still new, still careful, but genuine. They'd spent the past 6 months learning each other, training together, arguing about strategy and policy, building something that resembled trust. Kai Zhang followed them and carrying a stack of documents. Council meeting in 20 minutes, he said. The new PAC Oversight Committee wants to present their proposed changes to the mating bond registry. Kai had become Dante's unofficial chief of staff, coordinating between the Reformed Council and the various committees implementing change. His father, the CFO, had been one of the first to embrace transparency, finally free from Callista's blackmail. More reforms, Ronan added. He didn't sound resentful. He sounded engaged. It never stops, does it? That's the point, Dante said. Systems require constant maintenance. The moment we stop paying attention, corruption creeps back in. The five of them, Dante, Alaric, Ronan, Isla, and Kai, walked together toward the administration building. As they crossed the sun-drenched courtyard, Dante received a message on his phone. An invitation from the Pacific Northwest PAC Alliance. They wanted to learn about Thornwell's reform model. 3 other PACs had already adopted similar council structures. The change was spreading. Mom, Dante said quietly as they walked, do you remember what you told me the day I left for Aspen? I told you not to lose yourself in revenge. You did, and I almost didn't listen. I came here wanting to destroy everything, to punish everyone who hurt you. But you didn't. No, because you taught me something more important than revenge. You taught me that the opposite of cruelty isn't weakness. It's justice tempered with mercy. Isla stopped walking. She turned to face her son, this young man, who'd somehow carried her pain without being destroyed by it. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. I learned from the strongest person I know. They stood together in spring sunlight, mother and son survivors, who'd transformed their suffering into something that could heal others. Behind them, the Thornwell Academy rose against the mountains, no longer a fortress of privilege and dominance, but a place where young wolves could learn that power without compassion was tyranny, and that true strength lay in protecting the vulnerable rather than exploiting them. Kieran watched from his office window high above. He saw Isla and Dante standing together, saw Alaric and Ronan laughing about something, saw Kai organizing papers with characteristic efficiency. His family, fractured and rebuilt into something different than he'd imagined. He would never hold Isla again, would never have the life he'd thrown away 18 years ago. But he could do the work, could earn back fragments of trust, could spend the rest of his life proving that failure didn't have to be the end of the story. Redemption wasn't a moment. It was thousands of small choices made every day to be better than you were. That evening, Dante stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of what had once been his father's penthouse office. It had been redecorated, stripped of ostentatious displays. Now it was a workspace, functional, clean. His phone buzzed, a message from Kai. The new transparency laws passed the board vote. 87% approval. We did it. Dante smiled and typed back, we're just getting started. Because the work would never truly be finished. Every generation would have to choose. To maintain systems protecting the vulnerable. To resist corruption that always crept in at the edges. To remember that power was not a right, but a responsibility. The moon rose over the mountains full and bright. Dante felt his wolf stir inside him. No longer caged or suppressed. Free. He turned away from the window and walked toward the door. His mother was waiting downstairs. They were having dinner together. Just the two of them. No more hiding, no more fear. Just a mother and her son finally safe in a world they'd fought to make better.